So I'm headed out to meet a fellow photographer at his place, and I just thought I wanted to record something about yesterday, something that hit my mind yesterday. And yes, to give a little introduction about myself, I was one of the few lucky people who had an access to a two-wheeler very early on in my life. So that meant I learned riding at the age of 10. It was my uncle's Bajaj Sunny, which is, I'm sure many of you have not seen it today, but it's nothing but a 40cc two-stroke scooter. And by the time I finished my 6th standard, or by the time I was done with 10 years old, I'd already learned riding a motorcycle, my uncle's CD100, that is. And every time, my uncle had to go out with my dad, he would bring his bike into my place. My dad had a Maruti 800, and these two would go, on business trips or something like that. And that bike was to me, and that was when I learned how to ride a motorcycle. And then my parents knew that, I am riding, and to a certain extent, yes, they were supportive. The first ever two-wheeler my parents got me was an MAT Major. So it's basically just the MAT, but that was where, the first green movement from the government came in. So two-strokes needed to have a catalytic converter. At that point of time, the MAT with a catalytic converter was nothing but the MAT Major. Yeah, that was my first bike, and that was the first time I had properly learned how to run in an engine. Because, early on, I was just given a warning. You have a new bike, don't ride it fast. Keep it under 40 for the first 750 kilometers. And after the service, don't go fast either. Increase your speed limit from 40 to 50. And I was very, very, very patient with that bike. And after that, my parents got me another bike, which was a scooter. I'm not sure any of you have heard this, but that's the Bajaj Spirit. And what was special is that scooter was a two-stroke, and yeah, two-stroke's always fun, but this thing had a 2-speed automatic. So as you gave your throttle in, the gear that you could feel a gear change, and post gear change, this thing was like a rocket. It almost gave you the sensation of a turbo. And yes, that was it. And moving on to college, that's when I got my first proper bike. I asked my parents a Pulsar 180, which was like the bike to get. But my parents, knowing about me and how patiently I ride my bike, they would refuse me and get me a Pulsar 150. I had no complaints with that. That was the first bike I toured in. College mates would take off to Ooty from Coimbatore every night, weekly at least once. And that was my first initial days of proper biking, long distance riding, and even modification. Yeah, I done something really, really unique, I feel, today, because even after so much of technology, what I did exactly was I found I had a very good metal worker or a bike modifier, and he had helped me install monoshocks on the bike, and I would keep everything else on the bike stock. And many a times, when I'm parked in my college parking lot, people would look at this bike like something is different, I don't know what. And some might find out, and that's not coming up instantly. They look at it, look at it, look at it. Ah, this guy's suspension. So after my college, yeah, I went abroad. I finished my post graduation, came back, and I entered my dad's business. And my daily driver from a Pulsar 150 became a Hero Honda Splendor. The worst commuter bike in my books, because after that I got a Platina, and this bike was just amazing in every single way. This bike returned better fuel mileage. This bike was faster. This bike could even pull off wheelies, and this bike was more comfortable. So after that, it's been a while since I got in touch with bikes, and that's when I started falling in love with vintage bikes. And my mom this time would borrow money to get me an Enfield Bullet. I choose my words wisely by saying Enfield, because there was no Royal Enfield back then. The Royal Enfield can claim that they're the continuous motorcycle manufacturer bullshit. But for a very long time, that company existed as Enfield India and not Royal Enfield. So I don't know. I think the internet crowd are idiots enough to believe whatever they see on an advertisement. Yeah, with that, I started off my bike collection, and things really got haywire from there. I got myself an old Vespa from Pudupet. I got myself a Bajaj Priya, and these are bikes I actually rode. I wouldn't include everything that was in my collection, because most of the bikes in my collection were just skeletons and they never ran. So yeah, after the Bajaj Priya, for a very long time I didn't have a proper bike to myself. And at one point of time, I literally owned 12 bikes, out of which none of them ran. And I would pick on the bike which is the one that runs at that point of time and just keep it running. And then something happened. I got myself the Max 100. That was the first time after the Pulsar on which every single switch worked. That bike was something else, because that showed me less is more. That bike was low powered, but I still managed to tour more than any other motorcycle. And then yeah, I did not need a lot of bikes, and that bike was what really made me reduce my collection into almost nothing now. And after that, I had restored my old Fiero before moving to Damana, Chennai. And after that, I got myself the most rarest bike that nobody really speaks about, nobody cares. I've owned a lot of vintage bikes, but the rarest bike that I've owned was a Pulsar 180 BS6, because that bike is rare because nobody really bought it. And that was a good bike. And after that, I've been through 2 Honda triggers, one green and one white. And it was at one point that the white Honda trigger really broke down on me. Like, it lost compression, it wouldn't start, and the kicker was like as free as it can be. And instead of repairing that bike and again fixing headaches with it, that's when I got this bike. This is a bike I picked up from the showroom after 2005. Almost 18 years. Yeah, 18 years exactly. and I've kept her for 2.5 years right now. Now, why did I speak about all of this? There's a reason. Because, from the point of time that I started learning riding to date, 30 years, right? So that's my journey from a school kid all the way to an uncle now. So many things in life have changed, like the people around me, the way I see things, the amount of control on my life even. But one thing that doesn't change is the excitement that I get riding a motorcycle. And I think, people who love bikes need to nourish it. I don't have to tell them, they're gonna do it anyways. But what they don't understand is when you get a glimpse of your childhood, there's nothing like it. And as somebody who's 40 years old, if you're someone younger, I'll tell you, this is the only glimpse of your childhood that's going to stay with you for a very long time. So cherish your moment with your motorcycle. It doesn't really mean it doesn't really matter what you ride, as long as you enjoy it genuinely, and as long as you're not pretending. You're gonna form memories that's gonna stick to you for life. And I think compared to any other vice, this is very healthy. This thing keeps you on your toes. Your cognitive mind is always on. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say today. I've almost reached my destination. What do you think? And please let me know, at what age did you start riding, and what was the first bike that you actually rode? Also let me know, how does a vlog like this feel? I've not written down anything, because in all of my videos I try to script it down, like say this message after that. But on this I had zero thought process. How does it feel? Please let me know, and I'll see you in another one. Keep riding.